This is Rumi's guide to getting started with grazing management, providing you with tips and tricks to improve your profitability and resilience. In this video, we're looking at plate meters. So the plate meter is a really useful device for measuring the amount of grass that we have on farm. Once we know how much grass we have, we can make decisions, management decisions about what we do with things like our stock and management activities on farms such as making silage. What the plate meter does is it uses a metal or plastic disc, and that disc sits on top of the pasture, on top of the sward, and then through that disc travels a metal shaft. The metal shaft goes down to touch the soil surface, and inside the plate meter is a device that measures the height, the difference in height between the ground and the top of the compressed sward. What we then use is an equation to convert that height into kilos of dry matter per hectare. A kilo of dry matter represents the part of the plant that the animal can use, so that's the part of the plant remaining once all the moisture has been taken away, and it's the kilos of dry matter in which we use in things like feed budgets, and it's in which we use to measure the amount of feed available on a given area. So the plate meter is converting compressed pasture height into kilos of dry matter, and it does that on a per hectare basis, i.e. how much feed do I have, let's say in this field. And it also allows us to note the change in the height of pasture on farm on a week or bi-weekly basis. The difference in change in height we can use then to calculate pasture growth rate. And pasture growth rate is also expressed in kilos of dry matter per hectare. Once we know pasture growth rate, then we can make even better management decisions. So if we know our pasture growth rate, and we know, for instance, we're growing at 40 this week, 40 kilos of dry matter, we can compare that to an animal demand. It may be our animal demand is 30 kilos. If we're growing at 40 but our demand is 30, we therefore generate a surplus of pasture. And we'll manage a surplus of pasture differently to how we've managed a deficit. So if we went out again and we measured our grass and the resulting growth rate was that we were growing at 20 kilos, but our demand was still 30, we're then in a pasture deficit. And in a pasture deficit, we'll take a different range of decisions in order to manage it. So plate meters come in all shapes and sizes, but they all perform the same purpose. This model here is an electronic plate meter, so it's got a display on it that's going to give me the kilos of dry matter per hectare as I walk. When I go out to measure a field or part of a field such as a paddock, I want to take enough measurements to be representative of the feed or pasture that's available in that field. So ideally I'm going to walk a W shape in that paddock, and I'm going to take a measurement every 10 to 20 spaces, and I'm going to take enough measurements to get to at least 30 measurements for that paddock or field. That's going to give me a really good representation of the feed available in that field. And that number is going to be in kilos of dry matter. And the kind of range of which we're looking for is we're looking to go in to graze a paddock or field when it's around 2,500 to 3,500 kilos of dry matter. And then we're looking to take the animals out when that cover has fallen down to around 1,500 kilos of dry matter, or between 1,500 and 1,800 kilos of dry matter. Now, the reason there's a range in those numbers is because it depends on the stock class that's going to graze the field. Cattle tend to graze higher covers, higher pasture covers than ewes and lambs do. And also it depends on the pasture itself. Permanent pastures are particularly dense, and so therefore the plate meter sometimes may underestimate how much feed's available. And whereas with new lays, particularly if grass is going to stem or to seed, then they may overestimate how much feed is available. So the plastic plate meter gives us sort of a ready reckoner. It's more accurate than our eye, and it's a really useful tool for making decisions with, but we will always use the animals to check. So if a plate meter tells us there's so much feed in a paddock, and we work out that it's actually 4 days of grazing, we'll go back on the third day and have a look. So the plate meter gives us a good guide. It may not be completely accurate all of the time in terms of how much feed is available, but it's pretty consistent with its measurement. And the way we can help it be consistent is to walk that W in each field and to keep the route we walk the same. And so it's a tool we might use strategically at certain times of the year, but it's most useful when it's used regularly. And it may also be used in conjunction with a service like Rumi strategically to look at individual fields where there's a query on how much pasture is available, or we need to get really accurate information to go and strengthen our feed budget.
Improve your soil health and increase your farm's productivity. Get started with Rumi today by clicking on the link in the description.